Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jung-hyun. Let's meet today's panelists first and foremost. Professor Shin Sang-hyuk joins me to my left. And Dr. Bong Young-sik is to my right. Welcome back. Let's first take a look at our first topic of discussion for the week.
Iran is rejoining the international community after the international economic and financial sanctions on its suspected nuclear weapons development were lifted. As a result, active trade is expected between the global community and Iran. Additionally, a positive outcome in Korean exports and societal overhead capital, otherwise known as SOC, is expected.
Economic sanctions on Iran have been lifted after Tehran was found to be in compliance with last year's nuclear deal. Now, many hail this development as a victory on the part of U.S. diplomacy. Now, questions are being raised as to whether a same approach could be applied to North Korea. Dr. Bong, let me ask you this question now. So, North Korea now remains the only country under international sanctions for its nuclear ambitions. What do you think? Will it work for North Korea as well?
I think I should say not, unfortunately, because Iranian case and North Korean case are very different cases from each other. It is true that amongst all three countries singled out in the now very famous State of Union address made by the Bush administration 1 year after the 9/11 attack in 2001, North Korea is the only country left standing with nuclear weapons. Saddam Hussein's Iraq lost its capability by the Iraq War, and now Iranian government abandoned its program by shipping the reprocessed fuel to Russia and halted the activities of the nuclear reactors. It is true that there is a euphoric mood in the world that the success of Iranian case via diplomacy can be applied to the case of North Korea. But Iran and North Korea are so different. I would nominate three reasons. One, North Korea is already conducted nuclear tests 4 times, whereas Iran's nuclear program was in a very nascent stage. So North Korea has so much to abandon in exchange for the gains from the international society compared to Iran. And second, North Korea is out of the non-proliferation treaty system, whereas Iran still remains as a member of NPT. So inspection by IAEA continued in case of Iran. And the efficacy of financial sanction will be not so effective for North Korea because North Korea is not really closely tied to the international finance and trade. Whereas Iran is the 4th largest oil producing country and the number 1 in terms of deposit of natural gas. So Iran has so much to gain by abandoning its nuclear weapons program so that the Western world will lift economic sanctions so that Iranian economy can be revived very immediately.
So looking at the lifting of these sanctions, what can we expect the move to do for the global economy?
Well, these days we have heard very frequently about the official visit of the world leaders in Iran, an Iranian president official visit to European Union member countries, and even he paid his official visit to Vatican. The reason is very simple, because Iran has been isolated from the international community. In fact, when you count the period since the 1979, when partial economic sanctions started, Iranian market emerged as one of the attractive markets to the global economies. The population of Iran is about 80 million. And then, as Dr. Bong already explained, it has huge deposit of the natural resources, particularly oil and the natural gas. So I think as a market itself, the Iranian market is emerging as one of the attractive one in the world. In fact, the Korean industries, particularly automakers and the consumer electric producers, have enjoyed some monopolistic status in the Iranian market, because the Korean industries could have some exceptional treatment in the international community in the middle of the economic sanction on Iran. So I think considering the size of the Iranian market plus the plan announced by the Iranian government, they have a plan to spend about $12 billion in the coming 3 years to revitalize their economy. I mean, they have a plan to renovate or build the harbors and the roads, and such infrastructure will be one of the projects which the Iranian government put the first priority. So our construction industries will have the good opportunity to enter into Iranian market. But we have also, I mean, the automakers and the IT industries, even though they will face serious competition with the European producers and other competitors in the Iranian market, but still we will have a chance to enter into these markets. So this can be opportunities which we'll be able to expect from the lifting of the economic sanction in Iran. But we have also concerns. Iran is going to increase their oil production. Mm-hmm. But I think, the oil prices has been decreased, and this means that oil-producing countries' economy will face some serious challenges, which means that our exports to these oil-producing countries will face difficulties. On the top of this, such a kind of the current difficult economic situations, if the Iranian government produced more oil, then we can simply guess that the oil prices in the international market will be lowered. Then their economy will face another or more serious difficulties, which means that their demands for Korean products in their market are expected to decrease. That means we will have difficulties in our exports. But I think there will be some the time gap, which means that to increase the oil production in Iran, they should renovate the oil refinery facilities. They have to build new the facilities. So I think it will take a time. So on the short-term basis, I think we will have more positive the aspects rather than the negative aspects from the lifting of the economic sanction in Iran, I think.
What about from the point of global market investors? Not everyone is welcoming an increase in oil production because we already have an energy supply surplus in the market. And with China expected to record slow growth this year, we don't expect an increase in oil demand anytime soon.
Well, I think we have to think about the relationship between the Iran and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of the largest oil-producing countries, and then, as we know very well, the relationship between two countries has been in the worst shape, I think. Which means that they cannot agree on the oil production volume between two countries, which means that Iranian governments they certainly increase their oil production volume, regardless of total oil producing volume, including the Saudi Arabian oils in the market, which means that on the short-term basis that oil prices is expected to lower further. That means that will be, as I said before, another challenges to the economies of the oil-producing countries. So I think this will be also a direct threat to the global economy. Why? Because that purchasing power parity of the oil-producing countries has been very strong. And that means manufacturing countries, particularly the emerging economies, their major exporting items are raw materials. So considering the depress of the oil-producing countries' economy, the emerging countries' economy, as well as some advanced economies, will face quite negative impact from the lifting of the economic sanction in Iran. I think so. As a whole, we have to wait and see, but there are large experts are worried about the global economy, considering oversupply of the oils caused by the economic lifting of the economic sanction in Iran, I think.
Well, as Professor Shin pointed out, some industries will obviously benefit from the lifting of sanctions, including the construction industry as well as consumer goods industry. But the Korean government is actually moving to strengthen its ties with Iran as a whole and normalize trade and investment relations. What's the plan?
The plan is to facilitate the return of the Korean corporations doing business inside Iran. Although the European Union and United States lift the economic sanctions, but still the transactions cannot be made in terms of US dollars. So facilitating the financial transactions between Iranian corporations and Korean counterparts should be the first step facilitated by the Korean government. And the Korean government just announced its plan to let Iranian banks to resume its business operation inside South Korea. So economic activities are quite dependent upon positive psychology. So creating positive momentum and a positive atmosphere should be the job that Korean government should be focused on. Let me just add one more point that the Iranian case, in comparison with the North Korean nuclear case, reveals how important it is the resolve of relevant parties for resolving the nuclear crisis. The fact that South Korean economic activities in Iran steeply declined after the imposition of economic sanctions in 2012 was that United States was so determined to stop nuclear activities of Iran, regardless of the cost, to be assumed by its own domestic companies, its own domestic banks, as well as the banks and corporations of its allied powers, including South Korea. So that the trade of South Korea with Iran, which peaked in 2001 prior to the imposition of economic sanctions at $17.4 billion US dollars, declined to $610 million in 2012 because the Korean corporation stopped doing business with Iranian counterpart. So unless China, which commands 91% of North Korea's entire trade, changes the strategic position to punish North Korea if North Korea continues to develop its nuclear weapons, then regardless of all the multilateral and bilateral economic sanctions may be imposed on North Korea, they will not be effective in terms of abandoning North Korean regime. It's a hope to become a de facto nuclear state. Mm-hmm. The North Korean regime has to face a decision point, whether it wants to have nuclear weapons or it has to choose its own survival. But compared to Iranian case, the leadership has not been forced to deal with that strategic question.
And so far, China has been reluctant to put pressure on North Korea for fear that a state collapse would lead to massive number of refugees.
You're absolutely
crossing the
correct.
border.
China's policy toward North Korea has three basic goals. One is no war on the Korean Peninsula. It doesn't want to repeat another Korean war on the peninsula. Second, no nuclear weapons. But at the same time, three, no collapse of North Korea, because North Korea serves a great deal of strategic interest for China as a buffer state between China and South Korea, Japan, and the United States. So juggling all these three goals would compel China to remain reluctant to punish North Korea for its nuclear activities.
The government announced a new set of labor guidelines on the main labor issues involving employee dismissals and flexibility to change employment terms. These labor guidelines are expected to comment prior to receiving approval from the National Assembly. The labor sector's strong opposition to the implementation of these guidelines is a growing concern due to the intensifying conflict.
The government has announced a new set of labor guidelines as part of its labor reform efforts. Let's first discuss what these guidelines entail. Professor Shin.
Well, I want to pinpoint two the issues. The first one is, according to this guideline, the employers can evaluate the workers by the performance-based evaluation system, which means that based on the evaluation, if the workers performed not very well, the employers can fire them. I think the more details was suggested by the government, but there are some points which can make the people get some confused. What I mean is there are some arguable points in it. The first one is that depending on the opinion from the labor union, they said that this is the system which the employers can fire the workers whenever they want, they can fire them. But according to the government, no, it's not true, because that even though this system can be adopted in the near future. But when the employers wanted to fire the employees, there are some procedures which have to take. The first one is that if the performance of a worker is not very good, they can ask them to take the job training. And then, despite of the job training, their performance still fail to improve. Then they can encourage them to work harder. There are some procedures like this, but despite of those kind of efforts, if the workers fail to improve their performance, then employers can fire them. So totally, it will take about 5 years whenever even the employers want to fire employees. So the government defend their guideline like this. So this is not the law or guideline which exploit the labor relations in Korea.
Mm-hmm. And the other guideline?
The other line is that actually when the employers hire and they change the job appointment or job locations, job descriptions, and when they hire the employers, actually there are some basic regulations. The government decided to change this regulation. In Korea, to change the regulations, so far, according to the labor law, the employer should get the consent of the half of the labor union, which means that employers should have to discuss about the changing the regulation with the labor union on the employers and employees basis. But this time, actually, when the labor union does not consent on the changing the regulations, according to this new guideline, the employers can change the regulation based on the common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Common sense actually based on 6 detailed factors, such as how much disadvantages the workers will get from these new changes of regulations. Second one is that how much needs the employers have for the change of regulations. And thirdly, how about the improvement of the working conditions, except for the specific regulation which they discuss about. And besides this one, there are 3 other issues they considered. But basically, the employers wanted to change. Whenever they want to change the regulations, they can do it based on the common sense social common sense, which can be accepted at the society. Mm-hmm. But about this one also, the labor union said, no, this is not fair. Certainly there are some gray zones, arguable the areas between the labor union and employers, I think.
So essentially these guidelines are about 2 things. Companies will be able to fire seriously underperforming workers, and they will be able to change employment rules without the consent of labor unions. And the government says this is all to add flexibility to the labor market and help boost the economy. Labor is saying otherwise though, right? What is labor's position?
Labor's position is that even if there's a higher level of flexibility in the labor market, there is no guarantee that they will definitely boost the performance of the national economy. Where is the correlation, and how the government and corporations can actually prove there is a correlation? Otherwise, then it'll be just unilateral demand toward the labor union to make sacrifice. The government and the corporations are not doing the same. So there is a great deal of anxiety and distrust in the labor unions. Professor mentioned about the new potential guidelines to fire employees based upon common sense. A literal translation would mean that generally accepted social sense of rationality in the society. Mm-hmm. This principle is actually in existence in case of Japan. In Japan, the application of this common sense or socially accepted concept of rationality as a legitimate reason to dismiss employee are purported to be only applicable to very exceptional cases. Mm-hmm. The concern and the protest by the labor union is that the South Korean government's position is to make it widely applicable although there are 6 basic criteria, but still, compared to the case of Japan, this can be tantamount to granting almost unchecked authority to the corporations to wield a knife to dismiss employees at will. And another point to be considered is that the rate of unionization of a corporation in South Korea is extremely low compared to other OECD countries. So even though these regulations may be accepted, still 90% of corporations, most of them are small and medium-sized corporations, will have employees without labor union. So these employees will be left cold and unprotected under the additional reasons to be fired. So there will be a great source of anxiety for employees.
The government seems to be introducing these guidelines as a way of encouraging the corporate sector to adopt the peak wage system, right?
Yes, you know, one of the serious challenges facing Korean economy is very high unemployment rates. There has been some severe debates about the several questions. The first question is that we have to adopt the wage peak system or not. This is one of the key questions at our society. And second one is that whether we have to put more priorities on the hiring the workers, which means that the sacrifice of the old workers. So I think the government tried to answer these questions by giving the guideline. I mean, from the government perspectives. As Dr. Bong pointed out, of course, the labor union has very different perspectives about the same issue. But I think considering Korean economy, the Korean economy has been developed in cooperation with several dozens of big companies. So, in fact, the government, the guidelines about the labor issues has been rather focused on the labor relations at the very big companies. Because of our experiences, which has been very important to achieve economic development. So other side of the coin, actually, 80-90% small and medium-sized enterprises, well, they have been outside the protection of the system. So this is the, I think, fundamental problems we have. To have the consent, yes sign from all the labor the unions, regardless of size of the company, or the even laborers who are not the members of the labor union, the government should put the first priority to build the trust. I think a mutual trust is a fundamental thing to have a successful outcome in the labor policy. But regretfully, I doubt whether Korean government has been successful in building the mutual trust with the labor union.
One thing to note, though, is that these state-led guidelines are not legally binding, but they're rather an administrative instruction to the corporate sector.
Yeah, that's the reason the opposition parties and the labor unions are angry that why did the government go ahead to announce these administrative orders which did not have any binding power? Because the Korean Constitution specifically stipulates that all the labor-related decisions should be made by laws. So legislation should be taking place in National Assembly. So the announcement of these executive orders were received by the opposition parties and labor unions as a South Korean government. The administration tried to go around the difficult negotiation process with the relevant parties, dismissing and ignoring the demand and wishes of the labor unions. And there is no trust, sufficient trust between the negotiating parties, because who would say no to make small sacrifice to create more room for youth to get jobs, right? But even though the wage peak system may be materialized, the critics argue that there's no guarantee that it will create more jobs for youth in South Korean society. because the mandatory retirement age will be extended to 60.
Right.
So that those who are 56 or older can receive the diminishing amount of the wages in exchange for extending their retirement from the companies. But the fact of the matter is that most of the South Korean workers are either eliminated or retired before they reach the age of the 56 or older. So the wage peak system can be only applied to about 10% of the workers who are 56 or older. So even though this system may become very successful, the space to recruit more young workers will be very minimal.
So you're questioning the effectuality.
Right, and
of these
there's no
guidelines.
guarantee that corporations may use the surplus to create more jobs, to hire more people, or it will just stay with the extra money in order to improve the profit of the company.
Well, theoretically, yes, I fully agree with Dr. Pong. And then, in fact, according to many researches conducted by economic think tanks around the world, failed to prove the causal relationship between sacrifice of the older generations with the employment of the youth workers. So this point has been emphasized by the labor unions. What kind of the guarantees we can have from the wage peak system? To some degree, partially, we can have the positive economic benefits. But when you look at the situation with a holistic view, still we have doubt what kind of causal relationship exists between these two approaches.
There are 1.2 million young people in South Korea looking for jobs. And it's a 10.2% of unemployment rate, which is the highest in the past 16 years. And I found that very interesting data indicating how miserable and difficult life can be for unemployed young South Koreans these days. For the past 2 years, year 2014 and 2015, the number of registered marriages actually declined. They failed to reach 300,000 couples for the first time 2 years in a row, meaning that young South Koreans who have a big trouble in finding stable jobs simply postpone to fulfill their important dreams, including marriage. Not only their own house, not only their own personal life, but also marriage.
As robotics and artificial intelligence technologies are advancing, the paradigm in the robot industry is changing. From simple machines to intelligent robots in medical, education, national defense, construction, and silver industries. The strengthening of these industries along with the Internet of Things is predicted to expand the robotics market greatly in the future.
Artificial intelligence is bringing a paradigm shift to robotics. Robots are evolving from simple mechanical ones that replace manual labor to intelligent robots that can think and even evolve on their own. In fact, artificial intelligence and robotics were hot topics at last week's Davos Forum as well. What did the discussions involve?
Yes, as you know very well, the main theme of the Davos Forum or World Economic Forum this year was the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution implies us using artificial intelligence. The robot industry plus the AI, when they combine it, we will have the fourth industrial revolutions. So what we can say right now is that what kind of the benefits and what kind of losses we will have from fourth industrial revolution. I think that was a fundamental question discussed at Davos Forum. And then if I give you more detailed information about the topic, what they discussed at Davos Forum is that what kind of the difficulties we will have from the first industrial revolution, how much the AI will be developed, and then what kind of influences we will have in the future. All those issues were discussed very hardly at the Davos Forum.
Sounds like there are some mixed views on what the future will be like with
As
robotics.
always, technological revolution discriminates. There will be beneficiaries, but at the same time, there will be people assuming sacrifice and cost. So it is a hot topic at the Davos Forum and elsewhere, whether the technological innovation and the arrival of the fourth industrial revolution will create a better world for everyone, the digital dividend paid for everyone, or it will create a very hostile world for the digital divide. Those who gain will gain more, and those who are eliminated from the process will suffer more.
There was active research in robotics in Korea as well, and at Davos Forum, we showcased our first
Hugo,
humanoid
right?
robot, Hugo.
Right.
How far have we come in robotics?
Well, as far as I learned, that the Hugo can do a lot of interesting and important functions like running, jumping, but it lacks the conversational capability. So it has a room to improve in terms of AI functions, in terms of communicating. But there will be a day very soon that the Hugo and other robotics created and invented in Korea will solve a wider range of purposes and benefits for human.
There are some challenges for the Korean robotics industry, though, right? For example, our budget, personnel resources are very limited compared to the West.
Yes. To answer your question, if I add some more information about the robot industry in Korea, well, in fact, as of the 2015, in manufacturing sector, 10% of producing procedures had been automized. I mean, robots are using for about 10% production out of total production in manufacturing sector. According to some forecast made by one of the major manufacturing industry in Korea, by 2025, the ratio contribution of robots in the producing procedure would increase up to 25%. And as a whole, in the software, in hardware aspects, actually, we have competitive advantages over the foreign competitors. But in terms of software, we are very behind. Well, to have the competitive advantage in software, as you pointed out, that it requires more investment for the R&D. But I think in fact, we are very behind in the software sector. And then this is the case in the mobile phone, the IT sector. We have a very big, giant manufacturers of the hardware, but we are very behind as well.
We're importing all the major parts,
yes,
right?
And software. So I think to have the more successful activated the robot industry, definitely we have to consider how to promote software industry in the robot and IT industries as a whole, I think.
So what sort of a future can we expect with the development of AI and robotics?
The new phenomenon, the front line of the AI development is called the deep learning. Not only these robots like Hugo will only carry out main functions like collecting data and taking an action, it will develop its own logic of evolution so that next time it receives the same message, it will have gained its own internal capacity to come up with the correct interpretations of the true intention of the master. For instance, when you say in your car, saying that, oh, it's rather cold inside the car, then the robotics equipped in the car would automatically raise the temperature inside the car. Or the robots would greet you after you come back from a very hard working day. Then it would greet you by telling the facial expression of you so that you will pose correct questions. Master, would you like to have a hot coffee, or would you like to take a warm bath first? Then you answer, then you will accumulate your responses to reach the large deposit of the personal information, so that next time it faces a similar case, then you will come up with more accurate interpretations of your need.
So they're evolving
Right.
on their own, in other words. It's something like
Something
the
like
robots that we've seen in movies.
Seasoned secretary who knows you very well, better than you yourself.
Like
about
Iron
you.
Man's Jarvis.
Right, right. There will be the day.
Well, there have been some negative pictures pointed by Hollywood movies about these robots and artificial intelligence as well.
Well-
robots evolving themselves to take over mankind.
We will be controlled by the robots. Well, I mean, I was kidding, but I think many experts, I heard, they have empathized that the technologies will be improved a lot, so we will have even robots even have some emotions, I think. Personally, I do not want to see those kind of situations in the near future. So maybe we can easily guess that the robots can reduce our some manual works or a kind of the burdens which human beings have to bear, which means that the humankind will have more time. I think that the quality of life, the concepts of quality of life can be changed. So the human beings maybe will think about how we're going to manage our daily life, and they will spend more time to think about what happiness is, what kind of the relationship I have to maintain with my friends. Those kind of the questions, which are not very important at the moment. I mean, those things will be more important issues for individual life. So I think as we discussed so far, there are two sides, the good and bad sides. But I think to have the well-balanced the outcomes from the so-called fourth industrial revolution, I think we have to decide how we're going to manage our life. That will be the fundamental question. We have to find an answer.
So overall, we can stay optimistic about the future that intelligent robots will bring, but there are also negative side effects that people are worrying about as well, such as massive loss of jobs.
Right. It's already a reality in which all the countries are moving in the same direction, engaging in a foot race to reach the top position in terms of monopolizing the markets for robotics. Japan has been the dominant power in the market of the automated manufacturing machines. But it received a wake-up call in the aftermath of the Fukushima earthquake and the nuclear meltdown. It was not the robots invented by Japanese manufacturing companies that went into to destroy the nuclear power plants to take care of the damage. It was the robots that entered into the site was a robot made by the United States company, which used to be in operation in the minefields in Afghanistan and Iraq. So there was kind of brutal and rude wake-up call for the robot manufacturing companies in Japan that we are so behind, even in the area that used to be our dominant field, let alone the artificial intelligence industry that had been long dominated by the United States. Because the United States system is based upon the initiatives of private companies as opposed to corporations supported by the very generous financial funding from the governments like Google and Facebook, which commands an enormous amount of personal data. So that it'll be a very interesting competition between the United States as a forerunner and tracing countries like Japan and China.
And Korea.
And Korea.
For that
too.
matter, yes. Right, well, let's wrap up our discussion today. Thank you very much, Professor Shin and Dr. Pong, for your insights.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
That is all for this edition of News Inside. Thank you for watching. We will see you again next week.